They froze me out for an entire month. My wife and my daughter acted like I didn't exist, trading jokes about me in their secret group chat. So, one morning, at exactly 4:47 a.m., I walked out of that house without saying a single word. 3 years later, she sent me a wedding invitation. And when I stepped through those doors, she finally saw what I had become. My name is David Marsh. I'm 52, and I've spent most of my adult life engineering fail-safes for aircraft, redundant systems, backups, all the invisible layers that keep a plane in the sky when everything else is trying to drag it down. Funny, really. I could design emergency protocols for Boeing, but I somehow missed all the warning indicators, flashing red in my own marriage until I was already in a full nosedive. In hindsight, the clues were there. The way Patricia's eyes would glaze over whenever I talked about work. How Emma stopped asking for my advice sometime in her junior year of college. But I kept telling myself it was normal. People change, relationships shift. I was the provider, the fixer, the guy who kept the mortgage current and the cars running. I honestly believed that still counted for something. The real beginning of the end came in March, about 5 weeks before Emma's wedding. I came home from a consulting trip to Seattle, exhausted but in a good mood, because I'd just landed a huge contract with Alaska Airlines, 6 figures for a year-long safety audit. I walked through the door, expecting at least a "How was your trip?" or "That's great, honey." Instead, Patricia was curled up on the couch with her laptop, and Emma was at the dining table, surrounded by fabric swatches like some kind of pastel explosion. I set my bag down. "Hey, I'm home." Nothing, not even a glance. I tried again, louder. "The Seattle deal went through. We're looking at a really good year." Patricia made a vague humming sound that could have meant anything, or nothing. Emma held 2 almost identical pieces of cream-colored fabric up to the light, squinting at them like they contained the meaning of life. I walked over to the table. "Emma, those look nice. What are they for?" She finally looked at me, but with the same expression you'd give a stranger standing too close on the subway. "Table runners," she said flatly, then turned back to Patricia. "Mom, which one do you think works better with the gold chargers?" Patricia leaned in, studying them with a level of focus she had never once given my engineering layouts. "Definitely the one on the left, more texture." I stood there for another few seconds, feeling something cold settle in my chest. Then I picked up my bag and went upstairs. Nobody noticed. That was day 1. By day 7, I'd figured out the pattern. They didn't fight with me. They didn't criticize or yell. They just deleted me. Conversations happened around me, through me, but never with me. I'd ask about the florist, the caterer, the venue, the very things I'd been helping organize for months. I'd get one-word answers, or nothing at all. Sometimes Patricia would repeat my question to Emma, as if I hadn't just asked it myself. On day 12, over dinner, I tried to break the tension. I joked that weddings should come with an engineering flowchart just to keep all the moving parts straight. Emma rolled her eyes at Patricia. Patricia actually laughed at me, not with me. I finished my meal in silence while they talked about dress alterations and bridesmaid drama, treating me like I was a chair someone had pushed into the corner. By day 19, I stopped trying to join in. I just watched, observed. That's when I started seeing the small things. How they would slide items on the counter just out of my reach. How they'd schedule wedding appointments and simply forget to tell me. How every idea I offered was brushed aside, until Patricia said the exact same thing 5 minutes later, and suddenly it was genius. Day 28 was when everything shifted, not because they suddenly decided to treat me like a person, but because I finally saw the truth laid out in black and white. Emma had left her tablet charging on the kitchen counter. She was upstairs getting ready for yet another meeting with a wedding vendor, one I hadn't heard about. Patricia was in the shower. I was making coffee when the screen lit up with a notification. I wasn't trying to snoop. The message popped up right in front of me. A group chat with Emma, Patricia, and 2 of Emma's bridesmaids. My name was in the preview. My hand hovered over the tablet. I'd never been the kind of husband who checked his wife's phone or dug through private messages. But something in my gut, the same instinct that told me when an aircraft design had a fatal flaw, made me tap the screen. The chat was titled Wedding Planning Squad. I scrolled up, reading weeks of messages. Most of it was standard wedding talk, flowers, seating charts, vendors. Then I reached the part about me. One bridesmaid had written, "Is your dad coming to the dress fitting?" Emma replied, "Ugh, hope not. He's been hovering lately." Patricia added, "Don't worry, he'll back off soon. He always does." Then there was another message from Emma, dated 3 weeks earlier. "He asked about the rehearsal dinner again. So annoying, Patricia. Just ignore him. He'll get the hint." The bridesmaid answered, "That's kinda harsh, isn't it?" Emma, "You don't understand. He's just so boring. Everything has to be practical and planned. He sucks the fun out of everything." Patricia sent a laughing emoji and replied, "Give it another week. He won't last a month. Then we can plan things the way we want." I stared at those words. He won't last a month. Like I was some irritating problem they just had to endure until it resolved itself. Like my involvement in my own daughter's wedding was an inconvenience they were counting down to be rid of. I scrolled further and found screenshots they had shared. One was from our family group chat, where I had suggested making a budget spreadsheet for the wedding expenses. Emma had circled my message and sent it to this private chat with the caption, "He's trying again." More laughing emojis, more jokes at my expense. Patricia had written, "At least he's consistent, consistently boring." The shower upstairs shut off. I heard Patricia's footsteps moving across the bedroom above me. I put the tablet back exactly where I'd found it, screen dark, charging cable at the same angle. Then I walked out to the garage, got into my car, and sat there in the dark with the door closed. Something inside me didn't just crack, it disappeared. The version of myself who believed he was building a family, providing for the people he loved, being a good husband and father, that man just dissolved like fog at sunrise. I sat there for 20 minutes, completely still, while a different version of me took shape in the silence. This new version was calm, calculating. He was already working out the steps. When I went back into the house, Patricia was in the kitchen, hair still damp, staring at her phone. She glanced up. "Where did you go?" I smiled. "Just needed some air. I'm fine." She went back to her phone, already mentally erasing me again. That was fine. I was counting on it. I left at 4:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. Not because the time meant anything, but because that's when the neighborhood is at its quietest. No dog walkers, no joggers, no cars leaving for early shifts, no witnesses. My bag had already been in the trunk for 3 days, tucked under a tarp in the garage, one suitcase. Everything else I needed was either stored digitally or easily replaceable. Years of working in aviation had taught me that, in an emergency, you keep what's essential and let go of everything else. I stood in the kitchen one last time. Patricia's wine glass was on the counter, a faint lipstick stain still on the rim. She'd stopped rinsing them out years ago, around the same time she stopped caring about the small courtesies that hold a marriage together. I thought about leaving a note, something meaningful maybe, but they didn't deserve my words. They'd stopped listening to them months ago. Instead, I slid my house keys off the key ring and placed them next to the wine glass. Then I pulled out the joint credit card Patricia had been using for wedding deposits and cut it in half with the kitchen scissors. I laid the two pieces neatly beside the keys, 3 objects in a row, keys, card, wine glass. A still life called Things I'm Done With. For the last 2 days I had been systematically deleting myself from the house's digital ecosystem. I removed my profile from the security system, changed every password Patricia didn't know existed, wiped my tablet and phone of anything personal. I transferred ownership of the wedding planning spreadsheet I'd built, sending it to Patricia's email with a short message. "You wanted to handle it yourselves. Now you can." Then I revoked my access. 2 months earlier, I had quietly rerouted my direct deposit away from our joint account into a new account Patricia didn't know about. I'd sold my shares in the aviation consulting firm I'd helped build, the same firm no one at home ever asked me about. The proceeds went into a trust my attorney had structured through a colleague in Montana. Every financial thread tying me to that house, to that life, I'd been cutting one by one. I walked out to my car, a 15-year-old Honda I'd kept alive mostly out of stubbornness. Patricia always insisted I should buy something newer, flashier, something that looked successful. I always refused. In the end, that stubborn old Honda was the perfect getaway car. The engine turned over with barely a sound. I backed out slowly, headlights off until I reached the end of the block. As I drove away, I glanced once into the rearview mirror. The house sat quietly in the pre-dawn dark, peaceful, like it was sleeping off a bad dream. It didn't know yet that when it woke up, I would be gone. By the time Patricia found the keys and the mangled credit card, I'd be 3 states away. By the time she tried to call, my number would already be disconnected. By the time she understood I wasn't coming back, I would have already become someone else. I merged onto the highway and headed north. No music, no radio, just the steady hum of the tires on the asphalt and the quiet satisfaction of a flawlessly executed plan. They didn't panic. That was what shocked me most when I heard about it later, through a mutual acquaintance. Patricia never filed a missing person report. She didn't call my brother. She didn't even seem especially worried. 3 days after I left, she still hosted her weekly wine night. Her friend Carol, the one with the loose tongue and the strict morals, later told someone, who eventually told me what happened. Patricia acted like nothing had really changed. When someone asked where I was, she sighed dramatically and said, "David is going through something. Men his age do this. He'll be back when he's ready." Going through something, as if I were having a cliché midlife crisis instead of carrying out a carefully planned extraction. Emma posted on social media the following week. A picture of her and Patricia at a bridal boutique, both grinning. The caption read, "Just us girls getting things done. Sometimes that's all you need." Dozens of comments, a flood of heart emojis. No one asked where I was. The official story that circulated in their social circle was that I needed space and couldn't handle the wedding stress. Patricia told her Pilates instructor I'd always been emotionally unavailable. She told the neighbor I'd been acting strange for months. Every version framed me as unstable, fragile, quietly falling apart. In its own way, it was a smart narrative. By casting me as the one having a breakdown, she kept everyone's sympathy while dodging any real accountability. She became the strong, stoic wife, abandoned but still holding it together for her daughter's sake. I was the middle-aged man who couldn't cope. What Patricia didn't realize was that I had planned for exactly this. I left just enough ambiguity that she couldn't claim legal abandonment, but not enough information for her to track me. I vanished into the gray area between "he left" and "he's gone." In the first week, when she tried to access our joint accounts, she found them almost empty. I had legally withdrawn my contributions, leaving exactly her half untouched. In the second week, she tried to log into the consulting firm's partner portal. Access denied. I had already transferred my shares to Connor, my son from my first marriage, through a quiet private sale no one knew about. The managing partner at the firm, an old friend, processed everything under the radar. By week 3, Patricia started calling around to my old colleagues. Had anyone heard from me? Did I seem okay? Did I say where I was going? Every reply was the same. No idea. On week 4, she hired a private investigator. I know because he tripped one of the decoy trails I'd planted, a hotel reservation in Colorado under my name. By the time he showed up, the booking had been canceled, and I'd never been anywhere near Denver. Meanwhile, Emma's wedding plans rolled on without me. Patricia started putting deposits on her own cards. The florist never knew I'd been involved. The caterer scrubbed my name from every email chain. Even the wedding website, where it used to say, "Emma is the beloved daughter of David and Patricia Marsh," was edited down to simply, "Emma Marsh is getting married." I'd been wiped out. Redacted, like a classified file nobody had clearance to see anymore. But what they didn't realize was that while Patricia polished her story and Emma deleted me from hers, I was busy constructing something new, something they couldn't reach, rewrite, or pretend away. I'd rented a cabin in northern Montana, remote, off the grid except for satellite internet. The kind of place where the only voices you hear are your own thoughts and the wind in the trees. And I wasn't exactly drifting aimlessly. 6 weeks after I left, Patricia's lawyer called mine. My attorney, a sharp woman named Helen Rodriguez who specializes in asset protection, forwarded me their message with just 2 words. They're nervous. Patricia wanted access to my pension from my years at the aerospace company. She'd tried logging in with old credentials and hit a brick wall, so she went straight to a lawyer, assuming she could force her way in. Helen called me from her office in Seattle. "David, I've got their formal request here," she said. "They're claiming marital rights to your pension." I was sitting on the porch, watching eagles circle over the lake. "And?" I asked. "And they don't have a leg to stand on," Helen said. "You moved everything into a living trust 5 years ago. That's long before any wedding drama. It's solid. They can't touch it." What about Emma? That was the only part that truly mattered to me. She's named as a beneficiary, Helen replied. But there are conditions. She has to finish a degree, hold a job for at least a year, and live on her own for 18 months without relying on Patricia financially. I couldn't help smiling. So she gets it once she actually grows up. In essence, yes, Helen said. Whoever drafted this for you did excellent work. Patricia's name doesn't appear anywhere in the trust. There was a short pause. Then Helen's tone shifted. David, there's something else. Patricia's lawyer mentioned they're considering petitioning to have you declared legally dead. It's way too early for that, but they're testing the idea. My hand tightened around the phone. She wants me dead on paper. She wants access to your assets, Helen corrected. If you're declared deceased, parts of the trust could trigger early. But here's the issue for them. They need more than your absence. They'd need evidence of death or suspicious disappearance. You've been keeping bills paid, right? Everything runs through the trust automatically, I said. Then they can't prove you're dead, she said. Legally, you're just gone. And that's a very different category. After we hung up, I sat there a long time, turning it over in my mind. Patricia wasn't trying to find me out of worry. She was chasing the money. The woman I'd shared 23 years with was actively trying to erase me on paper so she could cash out. That night, Connor called from Vancouver, my son, the one Patricia never even knew existed. I'd kept that part of my life separate because I'd learned, painfully, that not everyone deserved access to every piece of me. Dad, I saw the trust alert, Connor said, disbelief in his voice. She actually tried to get into it. She thinks it belongs to her, I replied calmly. What are you going to do? He asked. I watched the sunset spill orange and red across the mountains. Nothing, I said. Let her wear herself out. The walls are already up. She just hasn't realized she can't get over them. 3 months after I vanished, Patricia was still pushing her version of events. I was the man who deserted his family, the father who cracked under pressure, the husband who lost his mind over wedding stress. Then one photograph blew that story apart. Laura's cousin, a yoga instructor who treats wellness retreats the way other people treat souvenir magnets, posted an Instagram carousel from a leadership conference in Oregon. Scenic mountains, green smoothies, the usual. Slide 4 showed a conference room full of people sitting cross-legged, all facing the speaker at the front. The speaker was me. I was mid-gesture, wearing a black quarter zip and gray slacks. No notes, no podium. The photo caught my profile. Focused, composed, entirely in control. The caption read, "Incredible keynote by DM on finding strength in silence. This man gets it." Laura had warned me her cousin loved to document everything online, but I'd underestimated just how fast a single image could travel. Within 12 hours, someone in Patricia's circle had seen the post and forwarded it to her. According to one of Emma's friends who was there at the time, Patricia nearly dropped her phone. They were at brunch planning bridesmaid duties when Patricia's face went pale. "That's him," she whispered. Emma snatched the phone, zoomed in, stared at the screen. 3 months of telling everyone I was broken, unstable, unable to cope. And there I was, looking healthier and more grounded than I had in years. I wasn't hiding out in some motel. I was giving keynotes, leading workshops, building a new life. Laura called me that evening, laughing. "David, you're internet famous," she said. "My cousin's post has over 5,000 likes. People keep asking who you are." "That wasn't part of the plan," I said, but I was smiling too. Maybe this was better. Let them see I hadn't fallen apart. I'd transformed. Laura was right. The story Patricia had been spinning for months, the carefully curated tale of the fragile man who abandoned his family, crumbled with a single photo. Because the man in that image didn't look shattered. He looked liberated. Emma didn't call, she didn't text. But 2 weeks later, an envelope showed up at the P.O. box I'd opened under a quiet alias. Thick, cream-colored cardstock, the expensive kind. Inside was a wedding invitation, my name written in Emma's handwriting. At the bottom, beneath the printed details, she'd written a single line in pen. "If you're still out there, I want you to walk me down the aisle." I sat there holding that invitation for a long time, reading that sentence again and again. No apology, no explanation, just a request. I took out my phone and sent a single text to the number I knew she still used. "If I come, no one can know beforehand." Her response came 3 minutes later. Deal. The morning of Emma's wedding arrived under a blanket of gray clouds, the kind that make the air feel heavy. I'd driven through the night from Montana and pulled into the venue parking lot 3 hours early. I left the black rental sedan in a service area behind the building, hidden from guests pulling into the main lot. Connor had flown in from Vancouver the night before. When I parked, he was already waiting, wearing a sharp charcoal suit that matched mine. My son looked every bit the successful architect he'd worked so hard to become. "You ready for this?" Connor asked as I stepped out of the car. "I've been getting ready for 3 years," I said. "Time to see if the prep holds up." We walked the perimeter of the property, staying out of sight lines. From a distance, I could see guests arriving, Patricia's sister, Emma's college friends, people I'd known for years who'd swallowed Patricia's version of events without ever questioning it. Connor checked his watch. "Ceremony starts in 40 minutes. When do you go in?" "When Emma tells me," I said. Not a second before. Right on cue, my phone buzzed. Emma's message was short. Bridal suite. Side entrance. Now. I turned to Connor. "Stay here. If this goes sideways, you're my extraction." He nodded. No argument, no dramatics, just understanding. The unspoken kind you find in families who've learned about operational security the hard way. Different paths, same principle. Plan your entry, plan your exit. I slipped through the side entrance, past catering staff too busy to register my face. The bridal suite was down a quiet hallway away from the main hall. I knocked twice. Emma opened the door herself. She was already in her wedding dress, veil lifted, makeup flawless, but her eyes were swollen and red around the edges. "Dad," she whispered, and for the first time in years, I heard my daughter's real voice. Not the dismissive tone, not the tired sarcasm. Just Emma. "You look beautiful," I said simply. She grabbed my hand and pulled me inside, closing the door behind us. "Mom doesn't know you're here," she said. "I didn't tell anyone except Ryan." "Ryan knows?" I asked. "He's your hire at Aero Consult Northwest," she said. "Dad, he put it together 2 months ago when he saw your signature on his employment contract. He's been helping me plan this." I blinked, connecting the dots. Ryan Hoffman, her fiancé, worked for the consulting firm I founded after leaving Boeing, the same firm I'd supposedly sold off to build my new life. Except, I hadn't sold everything. I'd transferred controlling interest to Connor, kept a silent stake, and continued consulting through an LLC. "Ryan knew," I said slowly, "and he kept it to himself." Emma nodded. "He knows about Connor too, your other son. He helped coordinate your arrival time with him." The web of connections suddenly came into focus. Ryan wasn't just some guy Emma had happened to date. He was someone who had effectively passed a stress test. Competent, discreet, trustworthy. "Emma, there's something I need to tell you," I said, "about your trust fund." "I know about the conditions," she cut in gently. Ryan explained everything, the degree, the job, the independent living. She took a breath. "I'm enrolled full-time now. I'm graduating in December, and Ryan's firm offered me a project management position starting in January." "And where you're living?" I asked. "We're moving to Seattle after the honeymoon," she said. "No financial help from Mom." I studied her face. She looked older now, not just in years, but in clarity. "What changed?" I asked. "That picture of you," she said quietly. "The one from the conference." She looked down at her hands, then back at me. "I saw you looking healthy and calm and free," she said, "and I realized you weren't the broken one. We were, Mom and I. We pushed you out and then blamed you for walking away." "Emma, no, please let me finish," she said. I saw that photo and asked myself, when was the last time I looked that happy? And I couldn't remember, because I've been living Mom's life, not mine, making her choices, following her rules. And look where that left me. 27 years old, no degree, no job, no independence. She exhaled shakily. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said. "I don't even expect you to stay after the ceremony. But I needed you to know that I see it now. I see what we did to you." I set my hand gently on her shoulder. "I'm here because you asked," I said. "That's enough." "Will you walk me down the aisle?" she asked. "That's why I came," I answered. She hugged me, careful not to crush her dress. When she stepped back, tears were streaking carefully applied makeup. "Mom is going to lose her mind," she said with a shaky laugh. "Let her," I replied. The music started. the same wedding march that has framed ceremonies for generations. Through the small window in the bridal suite, I could see the guests standing, turning toward the main doors. Emma slipped her hand through my arm. I felt the slight tremor in her fingers. "Ready?" I asked. "No," she admitted, with a nervous smile. "But let's do it anyway." The doors swung open. Every head in the room turned, and the collective intake of breath was almost audible. They'd expected Patricia. They'd expected the picture-perfect mother-daughter against the world story they'd been sold for months. Instead, they got me, the ghost, the missing father, the man who had supposedly abandoned his family. But I didn't look like a fugitive. I looked exactly like what I had become, a man who had dismantled his old life and rebuilt himself piece by piece. Emma and I started down the aisle together. Her grip tightened around my arm, and I kept my stride slow and steady. I didn't look at Patricia, frozen near the front, her expression flickering between shock, rage, and something that looked very much like fear. I didn't look at the guests leaning toward one another, whispering. I kept my focus on my daughter, who needed me to be a stable presence in a moment she would remember for the rest of her life. Ryan stood at the altar. When our eyes met, he gave a slight nod, respectful, measured, the kind of acknowledgement one professional gives another who's earned it. We reached the front. Emma turned to me, kissed my cheek, and whispered, "Thank you." I placed her hand in Ryan's and stepped back, walking to a seat on the far side of the room. Not the front row where fathers are usually placed, but exactly where I chose to be. That would have been Patricia's seat. Instead, I chose a spot in the middle and sat down next to Connor, who had slipped in through a side entrance during the processional. Patricia stared at us, at me, then at Connor, then back again. Her mouth fell slightly open as she tried to process what she was seeing. Connor looked like me. Same jawline, same build, same eyes. And he was sitting beside me with the easy comfort of someone who belonged there. She had never known about him, never knew I'd been married before. She'd never asked about my past, too focused on controlling my present to care about the years that came before her. And now, in one instant, she was forced to confront the fact that I had an entire life she'd never touched, a son she'd never met, a family arrangement that existed completely outside her control. The officiant began to speak, but his words barely registered. I was watching Patricia fight to hold herself together, while her reality was being rearranged in front of her. I watched her realize that every story she'd told, every narrative she'd built, had been based on incomplete information. Connor leaned in and murmured, "She looks like she's seen a ghost." "Two ghosts," I said quietly. The ceremony went on. Vows were spoken, rings exchanged. Emma and Ryan were pronounced husband and wife. Through it all, Patricia stood stiff and brittle, her carefully constructed persona cracking line by line. When the recessional started and Emma and Ryan walked back down the aisle, Emma glanced at me and smiled, an honest smile, not posed for anyone else. I hadn't seen that expression on her face in years. Patricia intercepted me before I could get up from my seat. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, keeping her voice low so the nearby guests wouldn't catch it. "I was invited," I said calmly. "By who?" "The bride." "My daughter?" "Your daughter?" I echoed. "You abandoned her," Patricia snapped. "You walked out without a word." "I left you, Patricia," I said. "There's a difference. Emma chose to invite me. That was her choice, not yours." Her eyes flashed toward Connor. "And who is this?" "This is Connor," I replied. "My son." Her face drained of color. "Your what?" "My son from my first marriage," I said evenly. "The one you never asked about." The reception was already underway when Patricia finally cornered me again. I was standing near the garden terrace with Connor, watching Emma and Ryan share their first dance. Patricia came toward us, wine glass clenched too hard in her hand, her smile gone. "We need to talk," she said through gritted teeth. "Now." "There's nothing to talk about," I replied, still calm. "Nothing. You disappear for 3 years and show up with a son I didn't even know existed, and you think there's nothing to talk about?" Connor shifted slightly closer to me. "Mrs. Marsh, maybe this isn't the best time." "I'm not talking to you," she snapped at him, then turned back to me. "How long have you been planning this? How long have you been lying to me?" "I never lied, Patricia," I said. "You never asked. We were married for 23 years, and not once did you ask about my life before you. You just assumed you already knew everything that mattered." Her cheeks flushed. So, this is my fault now? This isn't about fault, I said. It's about reality. I had a life before you. Connor is part of that life. The fact that you didn't know about him says more about what you didn't want to know than anything I didn't say. And the trust, she spat. The money you hid from me. I didn't hide anything, I replied. I safeguarded assets I earned before we were married. That's legal. That's smart. And considering you tried to have me declared dead to get those assets, I'd say my instincts were right. She jerked back as if I'd struck her. I never... Yes, you did, I cut in. Your lawyer filed preliminary paperwork. My attorney has the documentation. Patricia's mother, Dorothy, appeared beside her then. The older woman's face carried a quiet, weary disappointment. Patricia, Dorothy said softly, stop making a scene at your daughter's wedding. Mom, stay out of this, Patricia snapped. No, Dorothy replied. I've stayed out of it for too long. She turned to me. David, I'm sorry for how my daughter has treated you. I told her she was being cruel. She refused to listen. Patricia stared at her mother in disbelief. You're taking his side? I'm taking the side of basic decency, Dorothy said. You froze this man out for a month, mocked him behind his back, and when he left, you tried to get your hands on his money. What did you expect him to do? He abandoned us, Patricia insisted. He left you, Dorothy corrected. And can you honestly say you gave him a reason to stay? The silence that followed felt heavy, like the air itself had thickened. Patricia looked from her mother to me to Connor, and for the first time, she seemed to understand that she no longer controlled the story. No one here fully believed her version anymore. Emma and Ryan walked over, Emma still in her wedding dress. Mom, can we please not do this today? Emma said. My father is here because I asked him to be. Emma cut in, her voice steady. And I'm glad he came. I'm glad Connor came. I'm grateful they both showed up when I needed them. Patricia's eyes filled with tears, real ones this time, not the performative kind. You're choosing him over me, she whispered. I'm not choosing anyone over anyone, Emma said firmly. I'm just done pretending Dad was the villain in this story. He wasn't. We were. I didn't stay until the very end of the reception. After Emma and Ryan's first dance, after the speeches and the cake, Connor and I slipped out quietly. We didn't need a dramatic exit. Our presence had already said everything that needed saying. Back at the hotel, Laura was waiting. Sophia was asleep in the travel crib. Laura looked up when I walked in, searching my face. How did it go? She asked. Emma was beautiful, I said. And she's going to be okay. Patricia is still Patricia, but she's not my problem anymore. Laura crossed the room and hugged me, not out of pity, but as a partner. She'd spent the last 2 years helping me put myself back together, helping me remember what it felt like to be with someone who actually saw me. Connor ordered room service, and the three of us ate while he told us about his architecture projects in Vancouver, about his wife Sarah and their son, my grandson, who would be starting kindergarten in the fall. You should come visit properly, Connor said. No more secret meetings, just normal grandpa visits. I'd like that, I said. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Thank you for today. Can we get coffee next week? Just us. I showed the message to Laura. She smiled. She's reaching out, she said. Yeah, I replied. She is. 8 months later, Emma graduated with her business degree. I sat in the audience between Connor and Laura. Patricia was there too, across the auditorium. We didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. Emma started work at Ryan's firm, the firm I still partially owned. She turned out to be a natural at project management, detail-oriented, deadline-focused. I couldn't help but wonder where she'd picked that up. She and Ryan moved to Seattle, rented their own place, lived on their own income. By the time the 18 months were up, Emma had met every condition of the trust. I invited her to lunch at a restaurant overlooking the water. Connor flew in from Vancouver to join us. When we laid out the trust documents and explained what she'd earned by choosing to stand on her own 2 feet, she cried. I don't deserve this, she whispered. You do, I said. You earned it. You did the work. You became independent. That was the whole point. She turned to Connor. I have a brother, she said, almost in awe. You do, he replied with a smile, and a sister-in-law, and a nephew who can't wait to meet Aunt Emma. We spent 3 hours at that table building something new, not trying to glue the past back together, but creating a different kind of family, one based on honesty instead of appearances. Patricia called once, months later. I let it go to voicemail. She asked if we could talk. I deleted the message before she finished speaking. Some doors, once closed, are better left shut. Laura and I got married in a small ceremony in Montana, just family. Connor and Sarah were there. Emma and Ryan were there. Sophia was our flower girl. No drama, no performances, just people who genuinely wanted to celebrate together. Emma gave a short toast. My dad taught me that sometimes you have to walk away from people who don't see your worth, she said. And sometimes, if you're lucky, they realize what they lost before it's too late. I'm grateful I realized it in time. She looked straight at me as she said it. For the first time in years, I saw my daughter, not as Patricia's extension, not as a girl pretending to be grown, but as a woman who had chosen her own life. And that made every silent morning, every ignored question, every moment of invisibility worth it. Because I'd stopped being invisible the day I refused to stay where I wasn't valued. In the end, the people who truly mattered found their way back.